Now, if we just recap really quickly, mistake number one is you are pitching people before they trust you, and the fix there is the trust engine. Mistake number two is you want to charge premium, but you sound generic, so you need expert headline so you can fix the words that you're using, fix your positioning. Mistake number three is not about its skills or credentials. It's really all about packaging. The difference between an expert who charges 100 an hour, say, and those that sell a $15,000 service isn't just about skills or credentials, it's all about packaging. And learning how to package your ideas is a superpower you're going to learn about right now. Most domain experts believe that if my work is good enough, it'll speak for itself. And it doesn't. The truth is that you can have the best work in the world and it can still get ignored. You can be the most knowledgeable person in your industry. You can get incredible results for your clients. But if you can't take what you know and package it into something that people can see, that people can remember, that people can share, your expertise stays invisible. And the whole reason why this happens is that experts suffer from the curse of knowledge. They know their stuff, but they have no idea how to turn what they know into something others can instantly understand and believe in and pay for. And when you don't learn how to package your ideas up, you end up stuck at the bottom of what I call the expert triangle. The expert triangle has these three different layers to them. At the very bottom, you have the expert student who learns all the playbooks, who has studied the playbooks, who is taking the courses, reading the books, and really getting up to speed on what are all the best practices to solve problems in the world. And every expert basically starts here and does this, right? Now, when you're at this layer, you sell your time to the lowest bidder, you have nightmares about losing your job to AI, and you spend 100% of your time learning how to do the work and none of your time sharing what you've learned, because essentially students learn ideas. At the second level, you have the expert operator. This is that middle layer. And at this point, you've learned the playbooks and now you apply those playbooks. You help your clients get results. You keep sharpening your expertise. You keep learning and you keep getting better, going faster. At this point, you also spend 80% of your time doing client work, and up to 20% of your revenue comes from selling access to your expertise through things like your books or through courses or cohorts or group trainings. And the summary there is that operators, they execute. And then at the top layer, you have the expert entrepreneur. And the expert entrepreneur is completely different from the bottom two layers, because at this point, you create the playbooks. You develop your own frameworks, your own language, your own intellectual property. You have a process to market and sell access to those playbooks that you've created, that you've invented, that you've coined, that you've minted. And up to 20% of your time goes into working in the business, and 80% of your revenue comes from selling access to your ideas and not your time. So you're selling access to your courses, access to your coaching, access to a group call, access to your team. Because the biggest difference between these three layers is that expert entrepreneurs, they mint ideas. But most domain experts never move up the expert triangle for three reasons. And the first one is they just simply don't know the levels exist. They have never heard of this concept of the expert triangle. They look at their niche and they just see a whole bunch of noise. They can't tell who's at the top and why, who's at the bottom, where they are. They don't know really what's going on. And now you can. The second reason is they're too busy delivering. So they never stop long enough to articulate what they do that's different. So their work is good, but it remains invisible. And then reason number three is they don't know how to move up. So they're aware that some people are doing better in their market. Maybe they even set time aside, but they kind of feel stuck in the process of packaging their ideas and selling their ideas and putting these into courses, into offers, into systems, into products that can be sold while they sleep. And that's what we're going to start to fix right now. Because the most effective way for you to move up the expert triangle is not really to work harder. It's simply to learn how to mint your ideas. And if you think about this idea of minting a coin, let's say, so someone at some point, they decided to mint a gold coin or a silver coin. And the way they would do that, they would take the raw material, they would form and shape that coin, stamp it with some kind of design, whether it's a face of a king or some kind of animal. And then they would turn that lump of metal into currency. And that's essentially what you do when you mint your own ideas. There are basically three steps. First, you source it, you visualize it, and then you name it. When you source it, there are two approaches. Approach number one is to mint the new And then approach number two is remint the old. Okay, so let me break down what I mean by mint the new. With this, what you're doing is you take a process you already use with your clients, something that solves a specific problem and gets a specific result, and you turn that into a framework or a process, something that you can coin, that you can mint for yourself. So here's how to do that. So you simply just pick a problem you solve for clients, name the outcome it creates, list the steps you take to solve it, and then organize those steps in 3 to 5 groups so that you can say that, okay, if you can do A, B, and C, then you can solve this problem. The key habit that you need to have here is simply to notice. That's it. You need to listen to your customers. Notice what your customers are dealing with. Notice what you're solving. Notice the real problems, the real outcomes that you're creating for people. It's like you have to shape and force your brain to create time so that you can notice, whether that's through some kind of daily note-taking, journaling, some kind of weekly practice, or using a framework like this. Print it out and slowly start going through your processes, looking at what is a step-by-step process that I use to get outcome, and then what are those mini steps that I take, and can I group these things into individual, discrete processes, discrete steps. So that's how to mint the new. The second approach that I told you about, sourcing ideas, is to remint the old. There's nothing new under the sun except old stuff people remint as new. And the idea here is you take a process or principle that already exists, one that's become so obvious that people have become blind to. They don't even see it anymore. They just take it for granted. And you repackage it for something specific for your market. So here's how to do this. Find an existing framework, an existing principle or a process. Then you modify the ingredients, give it fewer steps, give it less time, make the sequence different, and then you package that as your own. Now, what I'm not saying here is for you to simply claim that you've invented the concept. It's about packaging or repackaging it for your market in a way that nobody else has. So let me give you some examples of this. James Clear didn't invent habit science. He reminted decades of research into 4 steps. Now, anyone can remember his 4 steps. Everyone who talks about habits, and they've read Atomic Habits, they speak about it from the way he framed it, from the way he minted that idea. Take another example from Ryan Levesque. He didn't invent surveys. Surveys existed for decades before him. He simply took the idea, survey your audience, and then he combined that with a specific method that included his ideas on decision trees and segmentation. So using digital marketing and digital surveys so that you can then segment people into email lists, and then you can segment your messaging to them. That's essentially his ask method. And the truth is that every expert in history has built on what came before them. The ones who get paid are the ones who package their expertise. Okay, so after you've sourced the idea, it's time for step 2, which is to visualize your idea. Now, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, visual frameworks turn your mental models into pictures that help people see how you see the world, so they can get the same result that you get, but without the scars. Now, there are 1,000 different ways that you can do this, and you can use ChatGPT or Claude to help you come up with different ideas. But here are some starting points that can get you started. You can use a grid to visualize your idea. So anytime you have some kind of way to prioritize or comparison, when you need people to try to figure out to distinguish between better kinds of different information, use a grid. If you have some kind of hierarchy, use a pyramid or bullseye for things. There's some kind of order, some kind of hierarchy to the way the thing works, the way your idea, your framework, your process works. You can use a cycle. So things like flywheels for recurring processes. When the output of one thing feeds the input of the next, use a flywheel. If you have something that's very process oriented, it starts here and it ends there, just use a simple linear process. Or you can use a canvas or roadmap, something that you can have a squiggly line. You can have a straight zigzag line that starts here and ends there. You can have a mind map that connects things. You can have kind of like a grid that's all connected together. Think of things like the business model canvas. Those are great for helping people visualize how all of the parts of your process come together. So pick one of those, or use ChatGPT or Nano Banana or whatever AI is dominating at the moment for this, and you can use this to help you visualize your idea. And then step number 3 is to name it. And this is where the real leverage is, because a framework without a name is just advice. A framework with a name is intellectual property. The 3 rules for naming are: 1, the name has to be new. And ideally, it should also signal the outcome of the mechanism that people are getting. So if they use this process, if they use this method, if they use this idea that you've now minted or reminted, the name itself should hint at what they're getting. So when someone hears it, they should roughly know what it does. Second rule is to use a wrapper word. Use words like a method or a system or a framework, formula, strategy, technique. These words signal that there's some kind of proprietary sauce, branded idea that helps you to brand yourself, helps you to separate your ideas and your concepts and your thinking from the average generic, already framed and stated ways that are already out there in the world today, so that you can come up with something that is new, that's not obvious, and that is useful. Rule number 3 is make it visual, because if the name creates a mental picture, it sticks even harder. So the image does half the memory work for you. Bonus points if the name of your framework rhymes. And rule number 4, make sure that your name is short. It's got to be 3 words maximum. If it's longer than that, then you haven't done enough to compress the meanings of the words together. Now let's look at a few more examples in the wild. So let's look first at James Clear. Now, what he did is he took the science of habit formation, where there's decades of research, and he reminted it into the 4 laws of behavior change. The 4 laws of behavior: cue, craving, response, and reward. He named it something different, and he renamed decades of habit research into something new, gave it a clear visual process, and now he's got more than 15 million copies sold of his book and counting. Another example that you've probably never heard of is from a client and friend of ours, Kay He. And Kay, he noticed that most productivity advice treats all work the same. Remember, I told you that it's important to notice the details, notice the problems, notice the outcomes, notice the differences, because that's where you're going to make the difference, come up with your uniqueness. He noticed that there's some type of work that we do when we're being productive that is $10 work, some is $100 work, some is $1,000 work, and then there's $10,000 work. What he did is frame this 10K framework, this 10K work framework. He built an entire brand around this one idea that he reminted from combining a whole bunch of different concepts and ideas together, put it on a grid, and he's well known for that framework now. One of my favorite examples of this idea at play, it comes from Brian Dean. He's an OG marketer from the SEO days. And at the time, a lot of other bloggers, experts, and marketers were saying, create great content. It's generic, it's kind of useless. But what he noticed is that listicles are really good. And then what he did is like, well, I noticed that these listicles are getting longer and longer and longer. And he said, well, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take whatever listicle there is, and instead of adding 2 extra points to the list, I'm going to add 5 or 10 or 15 and make an absolute monster of a post, right, to generate SEO. And so that's why he coined the term the skyscraper technique, because imagine that instead of building a small building, you build a massive building. And that single concept, not only did it drive lots of organic traffic for him as a technique, as a strategy, it helped people to remember that he had that strategy. It was a shareable idea. It was something that one marketer could pass to another marketer, and that helped to generate, to help him to stand out and helped his expertise to stand out. Because remember, the enemy here is this belief that if you just do great work, it'll talk for itself. And it's not. You have to package your ideas in a way that is shareable, that is unique, that is non-obvious, and that is new, so that people will pay attention to it, that they'll consume it, that they'll remember it, and they'll believe that you have that expertise, trust you, and want to do business with you. And so if we look at the pattern of each of these examples, all of these people, they source an idea, they visualize the idea, and then they name it. And they use these ideas so consistently, and they do this type of work over and over and over again, that they end up creating a massive library of these proprietary ideas that turn into assets for them. They mint these ideas that pay them dividends in terms of attention, in terms of trust, and in terms of sales. Now, if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of why minting your ideas works from a scientific perspective, well, there's actually 3 research studies that I can point to. And the first one is what I call the structure effect. And the reason why this is important is the world around us feels chaotic. And with AI, things are just like worse. And the reason why, if we really break it down and look at the atomic level, is simply because we have a limited working memory, right? So our working memory of all humans, maybe there's some people that have more, yes, chess players, people that practice and expand their memory and train their memory, they have maybe greater capacities. But for the average person, they can only consume and hold 4 to 7 different ideas in their mind. And a study done in 1988 shows that using frameworks reduces complex ideas into a single variable. So by organizing information into frameworks, you chunk down complex information into a single mental unit. So it's easier for people to process it and retain it. So the moment you turn something into a framework, you help people make sense of it. You help people see structure. And that's the structure effect. Then reason number 2 is rhyme as reason effect. Another very interesting study done in the year 2000. What they found is that people perceive phrases that rhyme as more truthful and accurate than non-rhyming phrases. So even if the phrases were completely false, they believed them to be more true. What this means is that the easier the phrase was to process, the more truthful it became. In other words, if your ideas rhyme, you climb. And this is only possible when you take the time to design the language around your ideas. So use resources like the one I've shared below, the worksheet, or simply take time, put that on your calendar and mint your new ideas. The more often you do this, the harder it'll be for others to copy you. The more you distance yourself from your competition, the more you stand out, the easier it will be to attract people, to convert people, and to keep your customers. Because these become your intellectual assets. And the more of these ideas you mint, the more of this intellectual portfolio will compound for you in the future. Okay, worksheet time. So step 1, source it. Just decide if you're gonna mint a new idea or you're gonna remint the old. Remember, if you're minting the new, you're looking at your own processes. If you're reminting the old, you're looking at a process, a framework, something external to your business, even external to your niche or your market, and then you're organizing that into a new idea. So source something first, then visualize it. Make sure that you pick something that is grids or processes or pyramids, bullseyes that you can use to give your idea some kind of visual, your framework that you're coming up with. And then step 3 is to name it and make sure that you follow the rules for naming. Make sure that's a new idea. Make sure the name clearly speaks to the outcome. Make sure the outcome that people get is in the name. If you're helping people get sales, put sales in the name. If you're helping people get referrals, put referrals in the name. Pretty simple. And it's totally fine when you're doing visualizations, just sketch something on the paper. You don't need to use ChatGPT straight away. Just use your own imagination just to get the juices flowing. And then later you can jump into AI to help you execute. The key thing is just do at least one of these this week. Start using it in your marketing. And by the way, if you stop and notice what just happened, I talked to you about the expert triangle, and that is essentially the mint your ideas in action. The mint your ideas in action is also another minted idea, right? So I took a concept that everyone teaches. Everyone knows this idea of different levels, right? There's experts, there's beginners, and there's intermediates, or beginner, intermediate, advanced. Everybody knows that. I didn't come up with that. But I minted that, basically that concept into something new. I also took from that book, The E-Myth. You can also kind of see similarities in that when I coined the terms expert student, expert operator, expert entrepreneur, and then just put it in a pyramid, this visual pyramid with 3 layers, give it a name. It's a new concept, but it sounds like something new. And hopefully now you remember it. So I'm kind of going behind the scenes here mentally just to give you an idea of how you can do this for yourself as well. Because experts who mint their ideas turn them into assets that pay them dividends. So remember that. 2 more mistakes left to go and how to fix them. So let's keep going.